Election tonight, we are tracking dozens of state and local races that were on your ballot today.
We are also following races around the country as Republicans try to take back control of the U.S. House and the Senate. The polls just closed in the states that you see in green. Polls are still open for one more hour in the Florida Panhandle, which is in the Central Time Zone. And in 30 minutes, polls close in Ohio, North Carolina, and also in West Virginia. The Georgia governor's race is one many people are following, and when we are here as well on the local station, it is a rematch of the 2018 contest between incumbent Republican Governor Brian Kemp and Democrat Stacey Abrams.
All Florida voters saw the governor's race on their ballots, and today voters had a choice between the incumbent Republican Governor Ron DeSantis and Democrat Charlie Crist, and time will tell tonight who will be victorious. Another race we're following, who's going to be Jacksonville's next sheriff? TK Waters and Lakeisha Burton, they won the most votes in a five-way election in August to replace Sheriff Mike Williams. As if election nights weren't exciting enough tonight, we're also keeping an eye on Tropical Storm Nicole.
Hurricane watches are in effect for parts of our viewing area, and Chief Meteorologist John Gahn joins us now with an update. You just got an advisory, John.
We did hear from the Hurricane Center here at 7 o'clock. They did not make any adjustments. The hurricane hunters are finding lower pressure inside the storm. The question is, to what degree is this diurnal? We have things that happen in the atmosphere as the sun goes down, changes the pressure somewhat. But either way, this is a much, much better organized tropical storm that I think is within hours of becoming a Category 1 hurricane. And then we'll see how it all plays out. These areas of yellow and orange represent where the heavier thunderstorms are. They're not a lot. This is not your classic summertime or even fall type hurricane or tropical storm. What we are going to find, though, is that the storm is going to dip down to the southwest and then take a turn back to the northwest. And that's where it gets a little bit more challenging. If that turn to the southwest doesn't happen, if it does not dip, it could take a track that would be much closer to Jacksonville and Stacey. Everybody knows the closer the storm is to us, the greater the impact will be on us. Right now, we're expecting some moderate to some potentially damaging impacts across the area, something we'll focus on over the next day and a half.
Thank you so much, John. We are also tracking races for the State House and Legislature, as well as local ballot measures.
We'll bring you the results along on the bottom of your screen at our News4JAX's.com. We'll then be back on air at 8 p.m. for 2 hours of special coverage before the 10 o'clock news. All right.
From Channel 4, the local station, this is a Vote 2022 update.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. 3 minutes now since the polls have been closed. A live look at the Duval County Supervisor of Elections office where they are counting ballots for this midterm election. The polls just closed a few minutes ago for most of Florida. Polls in the Panhandle, which are located in the Central Time Zone, will be open for the next hour.
All Florida voters saw two major races on their ballot, one for U.S. Senate and the race for governor with incumbent Ron DeSantis and his Democratic challenger Charlie Crist. In Georgia, voters are looking at a governor's race there. It's a rematch of the 2018 contest between Republican incumbent Governor Brian Kemp and Democrat Stacey Abrams. Local voters are also deciding Jacksonville's next sheriff. Whoever wins between TK Waters and Lakeisha Burton will finish out the term through next summer. Welcome, everyone, to our exclusive Election 2022 webcast live here on News4JAX.com and News4JAX Plus.
We're going to be watching those races and many others over the next few hours here. We have several crews across the state of Florida and the state of Georgia to bring you the latest from those candidates, as well as a closer look at the election process in both states. Kent Justice is also joining us with our panel of experts to give us their analysis throughout the evening. Good evening, everyone.
Yeah, so let's do a quick introduction. Rick Mullaney is here from the Jacksonville University Public Policy Institute, a government law attorney. Chris Hand is with us. Our political contributor, John Newman, is with us. So if you just start, what are we looking for tonight?
One thing to keep in mind, Kent, is how the votes come in, and don't overreact to early results, because Florida counts votes differently than, say, Pennsylvania. In Florida, we're very fortunate. Florida begins processing and counting votes, absentee and mail mail-in prior to Election Day, and you'll get those results early. In Pennsylvania, it's very different. They don't start until today. And the reason I say that is that viewers watch these results come in. Don't be misled by early returns. Good news in Florida. We should have a good handle on it this evening. Second thing, very quickly, Governor DeSantis is expected to win. One thing to keep an eye on, what is the margin of victory? Does it mean a red wave in Florida? Does he have coattails? Does it position him maybe for 2024?
Thank you. Chris Hand, what are you looking for tonight?
Kent, watching particular the voting behavior of NPA, no party affiliation voters, we've seen the turnout numbers both here in Duval County and across Florida today seems to be very strongly in favor of Republican voters in terms of who's turned out to the polls over the course of the election. But those no party affiliation voters, which are often decisive both in statewide and local contests, they often have the final word as to whether they complement that appears to be Republican turnout or whether they make the race more competitive for Democrats. I'll be watching that closely throughout the night.
All right, and John Newman, what are your thoughts?
I'll be actually watching to see what's going on senatorially. I think that the conventional wisdom is that it's Marco Rubio's night. But I'm also looking at what's going on in Georgia and also in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is going to be a pickup for Democrats if they actually get that. But also, if you got Mark Kelly out in Arizona, you got a lot going on in the senatorial space because the future of the country is going to be predicated on what happens in the Senate.
That is a key thing to watch tonight for sure. We'll be here for you for analysis.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Supervisor of Elections nationwide, they're also working very hard to make sure every ballot is counted and that every ballot is secure, which they do in every election.
And News4JAX's reporter Jim Piggott joins us live from the Duval County Supervisor of Elections Vote Center on the north side. Jim, vote counting is now in full swing. How's it going?
That's it. It's 6 minutes ago. The polls closed. And let me show you. This is what's called the tabulation room. I know it doesn't look that exciting, but this is where all the canvassing board, Mike Hogan is out here as well. And what they are doing is basically looking at the votes coming in. They'll be coming in shortly. In fact, Mike's coming out to talk to us real quick. Mike, I know you're busy. Right now, what's happening in there?
We're getting ready to upload the first reports,
From
mail ballots and
right.
early voting, and also sending that over to the state. Of course, there's interested in this count as we are.
I know you're expecting this could really give us a good idea of what's going to be happening throughout the rest of the night. And you could be getting these, what, in like 10 minutes?
Well, we actually have already seen several of our precincts already send their data in. So it may be very quick, Jim, but as you know, with 186 precincts, someone might make an error, and it may take some time to get some of that data from the field.
I just checked, and it looked like the turnout was at 50%.
It was a little over, yes. I'm disappointed. I thought sure we'd hit 60.
And what do you think that says? I mean, is that any indication? And we've seen more Republicans out, at least in Duval County, voting than Democrats.
Yeah, but that's been happening in the last couple of elections. I really can't. I haven't wrapped my hands around it yet. I'm not sure why it was down. Like I said, in 2018, we had 60%, and I thought there was more on this ballot than theirs. So can't figure it out right yet.
You got a few more vote by mail ballots and things that are going to be checked.
Oh, yes.
But all of that, everything seemed to be going pretty well.
Sure. We're right now at the post office to get the last run. They probably have a handful. I'm not sure because we went there a little earlier tonight, just before 7:30. Before 6:30. So I would say we got what I saw was 442 provisionals. That's going to take some time. We got to go through all those. Militaries are going to be coming all the way through to November 18th. They have 10 days after the election to get their ballots in. So we still got plenty of work to do, but the bulk of the work will be done tonight.
And we'll be watching tonight. Mike, I know you got to get in there.
Okay.
So we're going to see those results pretty soon.
Oh, yes. He's going to, as soon as he can. In fact, I told him 7:07. I'm not sure what time it is now.
Well, we'll find out. Thank you. So we're going to be standing by here, at least at the Duval County Supervisor of Elections office, watching as these come in. And, of course, we're going to be passing those on to you and find out what happens, if there's going to be any tied races, if any recounts are going to be made. We're going to show you that whole process. For now, we're live at the Election Center on the north side. Jim Piggott, Channel 4, the local station.
Jim, thank you. All right now we've got some results. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is leading over Democrat Charlie Crist. Let's look at these figures right here. I take that back. These are the early votes. that have been counted. Charlie Crist is leading by 60% over Ron DeSantis, who has 39%. These are most likely the votes that have been mail-in ballots in early voting. So these are early returns.
This is just a drop in the bucket of the votes.
Right.
So let's see how the night wears on and who will take the lead at this point. Scott Johnson is live at Ron DeSantis' campaign headquarters at the Tampa Convention Center. Let's start with you, Scott. Good evening.
Stacey, I was with the governor when he won his first time 4 years ago. I do not remember the crowd this big, which is inside right now, or this much security. Somewhat of a different dynamic here 4 years later, that now that he is a national political figure with all eyes on him, wondering if he will in fact win this second term and go on to maybe run for president. That's been one of the questions and one of the somewhat criticism of Democrats for Governor DeSantis, if he will in fact serve a full term, if he wins tonight. Polling has been strong for Governor DeSantis, with him leading Charlie Crist in most of the available polling. We'll have to see how that translates tonight in the vote count, but there is a lot of passion and excitement out here. I just talked to Jacksonville Mayor Lenny Curry, who is out here to see Governor DeSantis. He is one of his ardent supporters. So a lot of excitement out here for the governor as they come out here to watch and see what will happen. A lot are expecting and hopeful for a win tonight. Is this called soon? Will this indicate some sort of red wave in Florida? We'll have to watch and see, but we are watching to see if this goes quickly, because Governor DeSantis in these last few campaign stops has really been touting the election process in Florida, saying we have this vote counting thing down since the disaster back in the year 2000. Florida's really got it down to a science, so we'll be watching. The governor will be speaking eventually tonight, win or lose, and we'll be here for it. For now, live in Tampa, Scott Johnson, Channel 4, the local station.
Thank you so much, Scott. Marilyn Parker is joining us live from Charlie Crist's headquarters in St. Pete.
Marilyn, what's the vibe there?
A lot of excitement. You know, people are waiting for the numbers to start rolling in, and we have a few people rolling their way into the ballroom here tonight. Everybody anxiously waiting for Charlie Crist to come in, as well as, again, those numbers. You know, a lot of Charlie Crist's campaign in the last 2 days has been focused on optimism. You know, we had polls come in that were premature, but he says he was trailing in those to Ron DeSantis, but overall he wasn't worried about those. He says he's going to win this. And taking aim at Governor DeSantis, he says DeSantis is more concerned with getting to the White House as opposed to taking care of the needs of Floridians. And Crist says those needs are all on the ballot, starting with property insurance. And he also mentions how Florida is one of the most expensive states to live in the country. He wants to find ways to change that. He talked about voting rights being on the bill. You know, in Jacksonville, we had a lot of conversations around potential gerrymandering and a lot of influence that fell in from there as well. That's on the ballot, according to Crist, as well as a women's right to choose. He's been heavily relying on the things that have come down from all of this abortion conversation, using that to encourage people to go out to vote. Now, we have to wait and see if they actually did that. We know it could be a while before those numbers come in. We're also waiting to hear exactly what he's going to say here tonight. But again, everything else that we've heard from Crist so far has been optimistic. He's not worried about what those premature, as he would say, polls have said so far. He's waiting to see how people turn out and voted tonight. We'll watch that and we'll bring it live to you on air as well. We're live in St. Pete tonight. Marilyn Parker, Channel 4, the local station.
Marilyn Parker, thank you. All right, let's check in now with Joy Purdy with a county-by-county look at some of the results from the governor's race. Joy?
Take a look right now. This is going to give you a great perspective throughout the night of which county voted for which candidate. You see these colors starting to pop in right now, but as you heard our political experts say, it is so early in this night. Take a look. 0% of the precincts are reporting so far. 22% of the estimated total vote. We're talking about early voting, absentee ballots. So these numbers are still coming in, but let's take a quick look. Right now, you can see where this is. It's basically split down the middle with the small amount of votes that have been counted so far. We are going to zoom into our area, and right now you see, well, look at the Duval County numbers. They're not even tabulating yet. 0% of the precincts reporting, 0% of the estimated total value. These are the numbers so far. We're also seeing Alachua County here, 62%. DeSantis is 37%. But again, a cautionary look at these numbers. What's cool about this map is that throughout the night, we'll be able to compare the numbers coming in tonight to what happened during the last governor's race when DeSantis was up against Andrew Gillum. A reminder of how our area voted in 2018 then. Take a look, Duval County, Republicans 47% to Gillum's 52%. Alachua went for Gillum as well. The rest of our area went for the Republican vote. But we'll also be able to take a look at how strong those votes were and are tonight. So taking a look at the 2018 governor's race, I'm going to tap on this heat map so you'll be able to see the stronger the color, the stronger that vote is leaning toward that particular candidate. So back in 2018, Duval County almost white. That means it was just about split down the middle. Baker County, take a look how strong that color red is. 82% DeSantis, 17% Gillum. So we will take a look at that. We are also going to bring this back to 2022, tonight's results. We're also going to be taking a look at that I-4 corridor. You remember this area right in here, Orlando, the Orange County area. That typically votes Democrat, as does Hillsborough County, the Tampa Bay area. But what's interesting is that according to Florida Politics, that website, Hillsborough County, the voter turnout tonight is favoring Republicans. So it'll be very interesting to see what those numbers are. Again, no numbers reporting tonight, but already this color is DeSantis 50% to Crist 49%. Still, we'll keep an eye on that. We're also going to keep an eye on Southeast Florida. Broward, strong Democratic stronghold there. Miami-Dade, however, last 20 years voted Democrat, but also here, voter turnout, according to Florida Politics, is favoring the Republicans. But again, too soon to take a look at this number, at these percentages, but we will be keeping an eye on that as well. So we are going to take it back now to Kent and our panel of experts to try to figure out what's going to happen here tonight.
Yeah, and some of those things, Chris Hand, are what we've been talking out through the day. Early votes, mail voting, all those sorts of things. Are you seeing what we expected, maybe?
Well, the first returns always to come in, as Rick alluded to earlier, are vote-by-mail ballots and early voting, people who have voted prior to Election Day. And as we're seeing, both statewide and in Duval County, Governor DeSantis has opened up a small lead of several percentage points over former Governor Crist. That is largely consistent with the turnout data that occurred prior to the election. Obviously, we still have all of the Election Day ballots to count, both across Florida and here in Northeast Florida as well. So we'll have a much better picture of how the governor's race and other races, statewide races, are trending after we see those Election Day returns come in.
John Newman, are there parts of the state that you'll be watching for? Hey, if this county is red or blue, it gives us an indication of what's happening?
Well, for the governor's race, I'm looking actually down to the southeast part of the state. What's happening in West Palm Beach? What's happening in Miami? And, you know, that diverse Hispanic community, which is really skewing towards more conservatives, simply because they came out of socialism and communism, and they have an allergic reaction to anything that suggests that from a particular party. So I'm looking for what kind of vote tally comes out of that, and what the margins are for certainly some counties are more blue than others.
Yeah, Rick, what about you? What do you see in here so far?
Well, what John's talking about, there is the possibility, and some have speculated, that the first time in 20 years that possibly Governor DeSantis and Marco Rubio could get a majority in Miami-Dade. That hasn't happened in 20 years because it's the largest, of course, majority Hispanic county in the state of Florida. One thing to keep in mind, mentioned this yesterday in our preview, is that in the rural areas, they tend to be Republican. In the urban areas tend to be more Democratic, and the suburbs battle it out. You're going to see that play out tonight in Florida, when we see a lot of red with Joy. I wouldn't be misled by that if you see a whole lot of red, because some of that is rural. But you'll see that play out in Georgia, which is very important, and Pennsylvania, in which Pittsburgh, for example, and Philadelphia will be heavily blue. In between will be red, but there'll be the battle in the suburbs. True in Florida, Georgia, Pennsylvania, really throughout the country.
Yeah, and so specifically, we're talking at this moment about the governor's race here in Florida, but it's certainly something that we're going to see how that impacts these other races, the U.S. Senate races, not just here in Florida, Georgia, other places too.
And a real quick question, what about Southwest Florida? Do we expect limited voting because of what happened with Hurricane Ian?
You know, it's a really good question. They were talking about it earlier today that that they expected this to be a really smooth election in Florida. And remember, Florida is one of the best in the country, but that is the
Finally, remember what happened in
well,
2000.
there's a reason why we've become the best. It goes back to 2000 when we were not the best.
Right. We learned.
So kindly put.
Well, there was statutory reform really for 2 decades, starting in 2000 with the Bush-Gore race with only 500 votes. There was reform after that. It continued. Now we're at the point, quite frankly, when I think we're a bit of a national model. And tonight we'll demonstrate that because we do, for example, count absentees and we count early votes prior to tonight, and you'll see those results early. Sometimes they may give a Democratic edge because really in mail and in absentees, a little bit of a Democratic edge. Republicans tend to be more on Election Day. But in answer to your question, Stacey, they feel they're okay there, but that is the one vulnerability in the state is where the hurricane went through.
Yeah, so much damage there, yeah.
Thank you so much. Well, let's take a look at how the Florida U.S. Senate seat is shaping up right now. And it's a race between incumbent Senator Marco Rubio and Val Demings. Let's take a look at any early numbers we may have right now.
Yeah, Marco Rubio with an early lead there, 51% of the votes there. And Val Demings, his Democratic opponent, with 48%. We want to bring in Joe McLean into the fold. He's live in Orlando at Demings' campaign headquarters. We also want to check back with Janice Harris first, though, who's at Rubio's headquarters in Miami. Janice?
And I'm at the Marco Rubio watch party right now, and it really sounds like a party behind me. In fact, this is only half of the people that are here right now as they're watching to see those election results come in here tonight in Miami. Now, one of the things that the incumbent actually posted today on social media saying, tonight the leftist Democrat Party will learn what happens when you mock and ignore hardworking people in America. We also heard from Marco Rubio yesterday saying he was not taking any county, any city in the state of Florida for granted and encouraging all of his Republican supporters to get out and vote. He was just in Jacksonville yesterday, now back here in Miami, even here specifically through the election of supervisors for Miami-Dade County. It does show he's leading so far. But again, he's not taking anything for granted and waiting until the very last vote is in. This will be a very interesting evening with a room full of his supporters, also hoping he gets his 3rd term.
All right, Janice Harris reporting to us live. Janice, thank you so much. We're going to bring in Joe McLean's live in Orlando. Friends, family, and supporters of Val Demings, they're awaiting the results there. Joe?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. This room is absolutely packed. It's almost standing room only with media. It tells you the level of interest in this race, really in every Senate race across the country tonight, because the control of the Senate is just on that razor edge, just a single vote. So Demings, the Demings campaign, obviously there's anxiety. There's excitement here in the room tonight. She will finish off her 3rd term in Congress. She's hoping to move across the chamber to take Rubio's Senate seat, but for this campaign, she's made her career as a police officer and in Orlando, in Orlando's first female police chief. She's made that a center point of her campaign. She's originally from the Mandarin area in Jacksonville, though, but she has decided to finish her Senate campaign here in Orlando, where she built that law enforcement career. If she wins, she would be Florida's first Black senator. Her big campaign issues have really been protecting Social Security, abortion rights. She's a big proponent of public school, public education funding, and her campaign's attacked the incumbent Senator Marco Rubio for his attendance record. A lot of her campaign spots have mentioned that he doesn't show up for work. That's the tagline. But she's also criticized him for not doing enough to change gun safety laws after the mass shootings at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando in 2016, and then of course Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in 2018. So tonight, her campaign's really hoping to nab this seat and to give Democrats this win here in Florida, which many analysts have really said is just leaning more and more towards a Republican state, a red state. The Demings campaign hoping to prove that wrong tonight. Reporting live in Orlando, Joe McLean, Channel 4, the local station.
Thank you, Joe.
All right, so let's talk about what's going on in the U.S. Senate race. And John Newman, let's start with Florida. Hotly contested race here. And Val Deming's really shaped up to be a serious challenger against Marco Rubio.
Yes, she did. I mean, she stayed on message, which was really important. And Democrats are not very good at messaging, just being honest. And she did a very good job of staying really on point and on key with her messaging. And she did it with not having an awful lot of outside party support. She really did. Grassroots giving was very helpful. Organizing was very helpful. But certainly she contributed in her own way by making sure she stayed on message, didn't get distracted, and drove her message home. That's what I think you're seeing tonight.
And I'd like to hear a little bit more about that, but let's talk broader. This is just one of several key races, Chris Hand, that will affect the U.S. Senate.
Well, you don't have to go much further than one state to the north of us, and that's Georgia, where incumbent Raphael Warnock and challenger Herschel Walker are battling in what's expected to be a very close race, one that might not even be decided tonight, may go to a December runoff. Of course, other states like Pennsylvania, Nevada, Arizona, New Hampshire, even Ohio are contests around the country that may decide the future of the U.S. Senate and could come down to a very small number of votes. Ken.
Yeah, so Florida, Georgia, just a couple of the states with those Senate races that are really consequential tonight.
There's no doubt about it, and as Chris just outlined, if it's a 50-50 tie, which it is, and you're a Republican and you want to pick up a Senate seat, where do you look? Yeah. And I agree with what Chris just said. You look to Georgia, and that appears to be a toss-up. The next big advantage for them is Nevada. In the end, if you win 2 of 3 when it comes to Nevada, Georgia, and Pennsylvania, you may be looking at a majority for the Republicans. There are about 6 Senate states that I believe are toss-ups tonight, and it'll be interesting to see that play out this evening.
Yeah, so we really haven't gotten into what's happening in Georgia on the Senate side yet, but clearly we're going to be following that and hearing more from our reporters who are with the campaign headquarters down there for both Rubio and Deming.
And if I can bring up a question to you all, how much is election denial of the 2020 election going to be a factor here? Is it going to be at all for any of these U.S. Senate seats?
Well, I mean, some of the candidates who as we've talked about a little bit in our election preview, I think Rick raised this point. A number of the ultimate nominees for the U.S. Senate were Trump-endorsed candidates, some of whom adopted his view about those U.S. Senate races. Earlier this summer, it looked like those candidates were likely to lose and allow Democrats to retain their majority. As conservative and Republican voters came home, those races tightened up considerably. So it is possible that several candidates could be elected tonight who share the same position of President Trump on the 2020 election, denying the results, claiming the election was rigged, those sorts of issues. We'll just have to see how those races develop and how those candidates do.
And in your opinion, what changed since that time? You said it earlier in the campaign cycle, it wasn't trending that way, and then it did. Was it just the economy and inflation that changed that trend? I
think the economy and inflation played a significant influence in changing the trend. I mean, without question, Republicans certainly were running on the economy, on crime, on immigration. Democrats were running on different things. It all depends on what day it was. But the truth is that actually did impact, I think, what you're seeing tonight.
And now the Democrats are running President Biden. You hear him saying that democracy is at stake at this election. Does that stick, do you think, with this electorate?
Well, there was some exit polling, Tarek, for example, from the state of Pennsylvania earlier today, asking what were the issues on which voters were basing their decisions. And in those exit polling, you had a good chunk that were basing it on abortion, the Dodd's decision that came out relating to reproductive freedom, but huge amounts for crime, for immigration, for inflation, all of which have been sort of key portions of the Republican messaging over the course of the campaign. So if you combine those, it does seem that at least in that one state, some of the Republican messaging has resonated with voters. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, the balance of power, as we've been talking about, could shift as Republicans push to win the majority in the U.S. Congress.
Yeah, Democrats have controlled both chambers since President Biden was elected in 2020. All 435 seats in the U.S. House of Representatives are up for election. Florida has 28 of those seats, and Democrats currently have the majority with 222 seats. A shift of only 5 seats would transfer control of the U.S. House of Representatives to Republicans.
In the U.S. Senate, 35 seats out of 100 are up for election. That includes 12 Democratic-held seats and 23 Republican-held seats. Florida and Georgia each have 1 seat on the ballot.
We're watching several key U.S. Senate races in other states.
And polls are still open in many of those states, so we're still a couple of hours from even seeing first results in some of those close races. But one of them is in New Hampshire. Polls closed at 7 o'clock. Democratic Senator Maggie Hassan faced a challenge from Republican Donald Baldock. Hassan took office in 2017. Baldock is a retired Army brigadier general who has pushed the theory that Donald Trump won the 2020 presidential election, a discredited theory. And here is the early results, 4% reporting, and you could see Hassan was up. Let's talk about what's going on in Ohio right now.
Yeah, in Ohio, it is an open seat with Democratic Congressman Tim Ryan facing Republican J.D. Vance. Ryan was elected to the U.S. House in 2002 and was reelected in 2020 after an unsuccessful presidential campaign. Now, Vance served in the Marine Corps from 2003 to 2007 and is best known for writing the best-selling novel Hillbilly Elegy. Now, the polls there close at 7:30.
A Senate race that had in North Carolina, Republican Senator Richard Burr is retiring. The race for the open seat features Democrat Sherry Beasley and Republican Ted Budd. Polls there just closed at 7:30. We should start seeing results soon. Beasley is the Chief Justice of the state Supreme Court. Budd is a 3-term congressman.
Now, a Senate race that has received more money and attention than any other is the one in Pennsylvania. It's the contest between Democrat John Fetterman and Republican Mehmet Oz. Republican Senator Pat Toomey retired, giving Democrats one of their best opportunities to pick up a seat. The polls there close at 8 o'clock, but the final outcome of this race could actually be a few days away because election officials there, by state law, were not allowed to start processing those mail-in ballots until this morning.
And in Arizona, Republican Blake Masters is challenging Democratic incumbent Mark Kelly. Kelly is seeking his first full 6-year term after winning the seat in a special election. Masters is in his first campaign for office. He's been endorsed by former President Donald Trump. We're still more than 2 hours away from seeing those first results from this particular key race. Let's take it to Nevada. Voters are choosing between Democrat incumbent Catherine Cortez Masto and Republican challenger Adam Laxalt.
Yeah, in the final weeks, Cortez Masto has focused on the issue of abortion while Laxalt has focused on the economy. Both candidates have served as Nevada's attorney general in their. All right, right now, more results are coming in as more polls are closing on the East Coast.
That includes a few more states, and you'll see them right there in green. The states in orange have now been closed for the past 30 minutes. The next round of polls will close in 30 minutes, and that includes the Florida Panhandle. The biggest race we're following locally here in Duval County is the Jacksonville Sheriff's race. And here is where Lakeisha Burton and TK Waters stand right now with 44% of precincts reporting. TK Waters is at 53%, with Lakeisha Burton at 47% of the vote.
And Maxwell is joining us live from Lakeisha Burton's campaign headquarters on Jacksonville's South Bank. Also, we've got Ashley Harding live at TK Waters' campaign headquarters, also in the South Bank. We're going to start with Ashley. So, Ashley, Waters showed up there about 15 minutes ago. How is his demeanor? What's the crowd like?
Well, I'll tell you what, since the man of the hour arrived just about 15, 20 minutes ago, the mood is really perked up here. It's really starting to feel like a big gathering, even kind of a party. I'll step out of the way and just show you there's an estimated 300 to 400 people here. We've seen lots of people. We do know that former Sheriff Mike Williams is expected to be here along with Congressman John Rutherford, who, of course, is also himself a former Jacksonville Sheriff. I want to go ahead and show you that video of TK Waters walking in here just a little while ago. As I said, the mood really picked up around here. He started shaking hands with people. We've seen his entire family here, his wife, his children, his grandchildren. They're really focusing hard on the screens here because that's really keeping track of where we are with the votes. Now, again, Waters is campaigning on the fact that he has 30 years experience with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, which included his time as chief of investigations. And he says his platform really is about reducing violent crime and also increasing transparency. If we can look live here once again, you can see that it is a very packed house here. Again, a lot of energy, a lot of excitement, but also a lot of anticipation. People are looking at those screens, watching this as this unfolds. Of course, we're standing by here. We'll keep everyone updated. For now, I'll send it back to you.
Thank you, Ashley. Ann Maxwell is joining us now at Lakeisha Burton's campaign headquarters. Ann, take it away.
The watch party here started about an hour ago. There are a lot of people here. The candidate got here about 20 minutes ago. She's been out and about greeting her supporters. Here she is right here. Her supporters are telling me tonight they are feeling upbeat. They're feeling confident. But as we've seen with the election results up here on the screen, TK Waters, the Republican in this race, his lead has been widening. A campaign aide of Burton's told me earlier they're expecting the race to maybe be called around 8:45 tonight. But a few minutes ago she said it might be called sooner than we think. Lakeisha Burton has had decades in law enforcement. She retired as an assistant chief with JSO. Her message is transformational leadership of the JSO. She said she wants to change the culture, implement community policing, hire more detectives. Polls closed about 30 minutes ago, and we're continuing to watch as these numbers come in, hoping to talk to the candidate here in a few minutes. We'll keep you posted on what she has to say. We're now reporting live from the South Bank. Ann Maxwell, Channel 4, the local station.
Back here with our roundtable of experts. Let's talk about what's happening in Duval County. This is the race that we're watching here. Tell me your early thoughts here on TK Waters, Lakeisha Burton, and what's happening tonight.
Well, one of the things we were looking for tonight is, was there going to be a red wave in Florida? And what would we look to for a red wave in Florida? And if Governor DeSantis were to win by a big margin, 5 to 10 points or more, would that provide coattails throughout the state and in Duval County for TK Waters? His lead right now, still early, suggests that potentially there is a red wave brewing in the state of Florida, because this is a good indicator in Duval County, which has been trending blue. Although this is a sheriff's race and party labels aren't as important, a very good showing for TK Waters, and it suggests that, at least in Florida, you could be seeing some success on the Republican side.
You know, so much of this campaign, John, let's talk about this a little bit, was, hey, if you like the way things have been, vote for TK Waters, because he'd be the same as this. The last couple of sheriffs have been Republicans as well. Is that part of the narrative that voters are weighing in on tonight?
I believe that that's very largely the case. You know, we look at the Sheriff's Department itself for the most part. Certainly, I think the influence of Fraternal Order of Police and other organizations supporting TK, and certainly it would appear that it's more of a status quo support for him as a Republican. And certainly I think that the race in and of itself has had some unfortunate aspects to it as well. And I think that those things haven't portended into a kind of groundswell of support for Lakeisha in terms of the numbers, but certainly the sentiment. But going back to your original question, yeah, the powers that be, with Mike Williams leaving, Ivey coming in that structure, they want TK Waters, and that's what you're going to see tonight.
Well, so many people say, hey, crime is one of my biggest concerns in Duval County. And when we talk violent crime, Chris, the numbers here say homicides are up, and they keep going up. So how are voters reconciling this, I guess?
Well, ironically, as you say, even though crime has been a major issue in Jacksonville now for years and a chronic problem here, crime, when you look at public opinion data around the country, has been an issue that has really worked for Republican candidates. So when you're looking at a November general election ballot where candidates for local office are kind of paired up with candidates for more national or state offices, some of those same public opinion trends are going to continue and favor the Republican candidate, like they're breaking in other races, regardless of who's been in power. In addition, TK Waters has had sort of a confluence of advantages that have helped him tonight. One, the factor of a strong, as Rick and John alluded to earlier, strong performances by candidates above them on the ballot. That certainly helps. He's had a resource advantage for most of the campaign, having raised significantly more money than Lakeisha Burton did, and thus having more resources to kind of put out his message throughout the campaign. And just having the kind of establishment support, the ground game. John referred earlier to some of the police organizations that have gotten involved. So there have been a variety of factors that have come together. And also, his result very much matches what the Republican turnout advantage was. By the end of today, Republicans had about a 22,000 vote turnout advantage over Democrats. You're seeing that reflected in the TK Waters, Lakeisha Burton result. He's now up by about 10 percentage points, very consistent with that Republican turnout advantage.
So anybody can answer here, but I've heard the question over these months that this campaign has been going on. Hey, why does it matter if a law enforcement candidate is Democrat or Republican? Why does that matter?
Well, it's a great question.
Thank you so much. I get it. I don't have the answer. I want an answer here.
Well, I don't really think that it should matter. Crime is crime.
Yeah.
Hurt is hurt. But one of the mistakes I think that has happened nationally, even with the Democrats, other than Val Demings as an outlier, Democrats have basically run away from crime. They doesn't have to. I know Rick wants to chime in real quick, so I'll let you do that.
Oh, no, I agree. But going back to the labels matter, Mayor LaGuardia of New York famously said there's no Republican or Democratic way to take out the garbage. And I think there are a lot of local government issues that don't lend themselves to party labels. But I will say this, there tends to be sometimes on the Democratic side, maybe a greater focus on prevention and those kinds of programs. On the Republican side, maybe what some would call a harder law and order approach. But I don't necessarily think the party labels are that critical here. I did want to say that in our debate that we hosted and you hosted at Jacksonville University with these two, they were both very talented on that debate stage, but they were different. Lakeisha Burton, I believe, connected well with the audience. She was more dynamic, charismatic. But on the other hand, TK Waters was very substantive. His experience showed, his knowledge showed. He had a great command of facts and data. Two very fine candidates, I think, and I think Jacksonville's well served by whoever wins.
So we see the trend right now, but it's early, as we say.
It's early. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Well, in addition to candidates, voters across Florida also weighed in on 3 amendments to the state constitution.
Amendment 1 would keep property taxes from rising for homeowners who improve their homes to fight the effects of rising sea levels and climate change. And right now, with just 3% of the precincts reporting, 57% of Floridians have voted yes, with 43% voting no.
Amendment 2 would get rid of the Florida Constitution Revision Commission. That's a panel that meets every 20 years and has the power to propose ballot measures. 52% have voted yes, 48% have voted no, but that's again with 3% of precincts reporting.
Also, there's Amendment 3, which would increase the homestead exemption for teachers, for law enforcement officers, for active duty members of the military, and also for first responders. 56% have voted yes and 44% have voted no. Still very, very early on in the night and in the count for these amendments. All right, now to the state of Georgia, where the U.S. Senate race could have a really big impact on which party has the majority in Congress.
Incumbent Democrat Raphael Warnock is in the lead right now against his Republican challenger Herschel Walker. But please keep in mind, this is with 1% of precincts reporting and any mail-in ballots reported so far. So 59% to 40%, 1% of precincts reporting.
Staying in the state of Georgia, let's go to the governor's race now, where the Democrat Stacey Abrams is leading now over Republican incumbent Brian Kemp with 55% of the vote, and Brian Kemp with 44%, but again, only 1% of the precincts reporting. So still, 7:42 in the evening, very early in deciding who will be Georgia's next governor.
Joy Purdy is joining us now with a county-by-county look at those very early results. Joy?
Yes, Stacey, Tarek, this is what those numbers look like. That 55% for Abrams, 44% for Kemp. Take a look. You can see that 1% of the precincts reporting, as you mentioned, 14% of the estimated total vote, including absentee, early voting. So we are going to zoom into our area very quickly just to take a look. Very interesting here. Even though we're very early on, Brantley County seems to be pulling in its numbers a little bit faster compared to the rest of the state. So we're going to take a look. Right now, Brantley is showing 100% of their precincts reporting, 81% of that estimated total vote. So you can see Brantley, it looks like 92% for Kemp, 7% for Abrams. We can look at some of these other counties, but they are not tabulating so far. So these numbers I would not look at too carefully. I'm not even going to say them out loud since we're not showing. Let's look here. 25% of the precincts reporting in Pierce, 65% of that overall vote. You see Kemp with 89%, Abrams 10%. Ware County not tabulating anything here as of yet. Same with Charlton County. But I do want to point out, as we take a look at this, we'll be able to compare how these two are doing tonight to how they did when they were up against each other 4 years ago. In the 2018 race for governor, the entire area voted for Kemp, but how strongly? When I touch this heat map, you'll be able to see the stronger the red, the stronger that vote was for Kemp. So taking a look at 2018, Brantley was a sure thing, 91% to Abrams 8%, as was Pierce. Charlton, a little stronger red here, 75. Camden, a little bit lighter. That narrow margin is narrowing. Glynn County, you can see how it was. Ware County, how it was 4 years ago. We'll be able to compare those as we go through the night. Now, we want to take a look at the Atlanta area. This is 2018, last time, 4 years ago. The Atlanta metro area, yes, the core of Atlanta. Fulton County went to Abrams strongly. DeKalb County, that is the metro Atlanta area. But those outlying suburbs, we're going to keep an eye on. Touching that heat map 4 years ago, you see how light those areas are. That may have an effect on the core Atlanta area. Also, we are going to take a look at, let me go back to what's happening tonight. Yeah, those numbers still coming in. We're going to take a good look at this area right across central Georgia, the Black Belt. This is where, after slavery, a lot of black families settled. Democrat, very strong Democrat voting. But as we saw 4 years ago, that is changing. Take a look in the heavily populated areas, Augusta, Macon, Columbus. But when I touch the heat map, look how light those colors actually are, which means this area has become almost a toss-up. So we're going to keep an eye on that as we go into tonight. We also will keep an eye on our area, Savannah. Take a look at how they voted last time, but the heat map shows not such a strong blue. So back and forth we go, and we'll be able to pull up those 2018 numbers right here, so I don't have to flip back and forth through the maps. We'll be able to keep those numbers up for you as we zoom into our area and look throughout the state of Georgia. All right, let's toss it back to Tarek and Stacy.
Really good information, Joy. Thank you. In the state of Georgia has been under scrutiny since the 2020 presidential election.
And Vic Micolucci is joining us live right now from the Fulton County Election Center in Atlanta. Vic, what do you know about extra measures in place there to make sure every vote is counted?
Oh, there is a lot of safety and security measures here. In fact, it took a little bit of time to get through security for us personally, so that's why I have this name badge on, because we had to register to come in. So this is a big Fulton County warehouse, and what's happening here is they're going to be bringing in all of the paper ballots, potentially millions of those here. They've already gone through the early voting ballots, about 250,000 of them, and they're going to be just making sure that everything is safe and secure. Now, there are some changes because of the new law here. We're talking about 202. So now, as compared to in the 2020 election, we're not able to see what is being taken place inside this warehouse. But let me tell you, there are lawyers, there are poll watchers, and elections teams from both sides, the Republicans, the Democrats, and some nonpartisan groups in there, just making sure that everything is safe and secure. So what I'm told is in the next maybe 30 minutes to an hour behind me, we're going to start seeing some boxes of ballots coming in. Obviously, they're going to be very secure. They're going to go in there, and that's when you're going to see the final tabulations to make sure that everything is safe and locked away, and everybody can have confidence that no matter who won, that the voting process here was fair. Fulton County has had a lot of controversy over the years, a lot of scrutiny over the years. This is the most populous county in the state of Georgia. It is where Atlanta is, and certainly that's why a lot of people are here. And let me just show you, this parking lot is full of cars. Not just elections officials, but lawyers, poll watchers from both sides, everybody that is going to be here, as long as they need to be here, to make sure that every vote is counted and that there is no fraud, that there is nothing bad happening behind the scenes. So a lot of checks and balances. We spoke with voters throughout Metro Atlanta throughout the day, and they told us they do feel safe and confident. We also just heard from Gabriel Sterling. He's the chief elections official for the state of Georgia under the Secretary of State. And he said, and I quote, "Today has been wonderfully and stupendously boring," which is good news. Good news there. Reporting live in Atlanta, I'm Vic Micolucci, Channel 4, the local station.
All right. right, so let's turn our attention specifically to what's happening in Georgia there. This rematch between Kemp and Abrams. How do you see this showing up so far tonight?
Really, really close the last time. The polling data suggests that Brian Kemp has an advantage. And over the last 4 years, he has carefully navigated his relationship with Donald Trump. Clearly not supported by Donald Trump. Donald Trump did everything he could to keep Brian Kemp from being in that position, very opposed to him. Kemp has been very successful over the last 4 years and is positioned, according to the data, to be very successful tonight. One of the things to keep an eye on, and I've mentioned this before that I think is important, that with this partisan divide, it's not that common anymore to have a split ticket, how you vote for governor versus how you vote for senator. If Brian Kemp, in fact, has a very good night and is able to beat Stacey Abrams with a margin, that could be a potential help to Herschel Walker. By the way, in Pennsylvania, it works the opposite way. Josh Shapiro, very strong candidate on the Democratic side, that could be a help to John Fetterman. So Georgia, the eyes of the country are on Georgia. They're watching the governor's race, but they're really watching that Senate race because the balance of power could possibly come down to Georgia.
Yeah, let's hear more of your thoughts on what's happening here in Georgia. John?
Well, I was just going to say behind what Rick said that I do think there are going to be a significant number of people who pull the, I keep saying pull the lever, I'm an old guy, right? Who are going to check the box for Brian Kemp, but not necessarily for Herschel Walker. I think there's going to be some split tickets in Georgia. And for Raphael, Senator Warnock to take it, I think it's going to indicate there were split tickets in Georgia. I really think it's an indicator. If he pulls it out, I think that's why.
Well, it's interesting to see the heat map and what Joy is showing us there. I mean, there's about 11 million people in Georgia, but 6 million in that Atlanta metropolitan area. Thoughts from you, Chris?
Well, that's obviously crucial, the ever-growing Atlanta metropolitan area. Every time I turn around, there are more counties that have become part of the Atlanta metropolitan area. So it's one of the most politically influential centers in the country. But Georgia is now where Florida used to be, kind of the ultimate swing state in the country. And what we're seeing in both the governor and the Senate race is sort of the battle between two different factors. Democrats, largely due to the work of Stacey Abrams and others, have built a very strong voter turnout machine in the state of Georgia. That's going to be strong for the Democrats tonight, and we're seeing it in the early results in some of the statewide elections, versus the national environment, the fact that some of these issues tend to be breaking for Republican candidates. How that divide is resolved is obviously going to tell us who ends up winning these races either tonight or in December.
And John, or Chris, I'm thinking about what Rick said a moment ago. Governor Kemp really had to determine if he was going to hold to some personal values or what have you, or to Donald Trump, who was instrumental in him being elected 4 years ago. And when all of that happened, he said he was going to go his own path. Does that make a difference tonight?
I think it does. I really do. I think that people, you know, for whatever they think of his politics, I think that they think in terms of his own fortitude to make up his own mind and not be owned by former President Trump. I think that resonated with some voters, and I think they rewarded him for that resonation by voting for him. I really believe so. I think he would have lost votes had he kowtowed to the pressure of Donald Trump. I really think he would have.
Yeah, plenty of pressure comes from Donald Trump in these elections.
I agree with John. And going back to something Stacey said earlier, if you look at the top 6 Senate seats that are contested, all 6 are Trump-backed candidates. And I actually think that's part of the reason why they're so tight in this time of inflation with the economy. Those top 6, six are Trump. Look at Herschel Walker, backed by Donald Trump. Adam Laxalt, Trump. Masters, Trump. Dr. Oz, Trump. Vance, Trump. Bullock, Trump. All 6 of the biggest toss-ups are backed by Donald Trump. In Georgia, Brian Kemp went his own path, and I think it clearly helps him in Georgia. Don't know what's going to happen, but he navigated, just like Glenn Youngkins did in Virginia last year. Maybe Trump wasn't opposed to him, but how that relationship with Trump's an important one.
Thank you. Well, Florida has 28 of the 435 seats in the House of Representatives that are being decided. A few of them are here in our area.
Yeah, Florida's 3rd congressional district covers all of north central Florida, including Alachua, Bradford, Columbia, and Union counties. Democrat and first-time office seeker Danielle Hawk challenged the Republican incumbent Kat Cammack, seeking her second term. Kat Cammack has 56% of the vote, with 12% of the precincts reporting to Danielle Hawk's 43% of the vote at this point in the evening.
The newly drawn 4th congressional district covers part of Duval County and all of Nassau County. Democrat LaShonda Holloway narrowly defeated Tony Hill in the Democratic primary to face Republican State Senator Aaron Bean. And Aaron Bean right now is at 59% of the votes, with 54% of the precincts reporting.
Florida's 6th congressional district that covers southern St. Johns County, Putnam, and Flagler counties. The incumbent Republican Congressman Michael Waltz is running for his 3rd term in his seat formerly held by Ron DeSantis, challenged by Libertarian Joe Hanush, and Michael Waltz has 73% of the vote, a very strong lead, with only 47% of the precincts reporting, but a very strong lead right now.
Now, politics is serious business, but of course, let's not forget there's also some joy in exercising your right to vote. And we have been asking you throughout the day to send in your I voted pictures, and we have received a lot through SnapJax.
Yeah, here's some of our favorites. This is photos of people with their I voted sticker at various precincts throughout North Florida, all with smiles on their faces, all with the thought that they have done their duty as citizens here in all of our counties. You can go to our News4JAX.com/SnapJax and look under the Election Day tab to check out even more of these photos. You may even see yourself.
There you go. Well, as the results come in, we invite you to join us for our special election coverage over the next few hours.
You can watch it on the local station and on News4JAX.com and on News4JAX Plus. That starts in just 5 minutes, promptly at 8 o'clock.